Well, hello, and welcome to the Imposters Club. It's the podcast for misfits, free thinkers in tech. And I'm your host, Teddy Kim. Today I want to talk about vicious cycles and virtuous circles. And what got me thinking about this was, believe it or not, a tech conference. Yep, I went to Dashcon this week. That's a conference sponsored by the tool vendor Datadog, and it was awesome. But first, let's put things into context. Allow me to take you on a stroll down memory lane. Back in 2000, I worked for a B2B exchange for the healthcare supply chain. There was no cloud to speak of in those days. Virtualization was being talked about, but it was basically science fiction. So believe it or not, we actually went down to Perot Systems in Texas, the H. Ross Perot, and built a data center. When I say the words out loud, it sounds absurd. Crawling around with knee pads, stringing cables, assembling racks, running power and fans. As wacky as it sounds, that's how you used to do stuff. Compute was not a commodity that you could buy off the shelf. If you wanted compute, you pretty much had to build it yourself. It sucked. Here's something else that sucked. Supporting apps. If anything went wrong, you basically had to SSH into a box and start eyeballing logs. If you had multiple servers, well, then you would have multiple terminal sessions and you just had to grep and tail and try to understand what you were seeing as best you could. What about monitors? Well, if top counts, then I guess we had monitors. Network traces? Not exactly. But who needs tracing when you have TCP dump? Womp womp. But anyway, imagine trying to read through a heap dump in a DOS terminal session while the CIO is literally standing over your shoulder with his hair on fire, pestering you with irritating questions. Sigh. It's kind of hard to explain to early career devs just how difficult it used to be to support apps in production. I liken it to a dirty diaper filled with kimchi and Stilton cheese rocketing towards your face while your hands are tied behind your back. Here's the thing. When your ops tooling sucks, supporting production is much harder than it needs to be. With disjointed tooling, you need to make mental leaps between logs, network traces, exceptions, and monitors. So, what kind of person is capable of making this kind of mental leap without falling into the abyss? What kind of unicorn can quickly make a valid inference from an isolated stack trace in a log file? Well, it's going to be your most seasoned engineers with the deepest domain knowledge. So what? Why is this a problem? It's a problem because as your systems scale, your most seasoned engineers spend more and more time supporting production. Because production surface is the only one customers touch, the natural impulse is to put your senior devs on the case, closest to the customer. They're the ones who get paged in the middle of the night. The seniors are tied up in postmortems. You wish they could spend more time coaching and mentoring the early career devs, but there are only so many hours in a day, and production never ends. So the noobs are left to figure it out on their own, and the senior devs are lashed to the mast, unable to dodge the dirty diapers filled with kimchi and Stilton cheese. Meanwhile, the early career devs are on the sidelines. They're unable to contribute, and so they lose status in the team as the team's dependence on the senior team member grows. At some point, losing this unicorn employee constitutes a viability event for the company. Her value to the company no longer derives from her skill as a designer or engineer, you just need her to keep the lights on. When you get to this point, it's game over, man. You are trapped in the vicious cycle. The unicorn is going to burn out and leave, and the vicious cycle will begin anew. How are we ever going to break the vicious cycle? Well, let's fast forward to the present, 2019. You might think that it would be much easier to support apps in prod, but it's complicated. Yeah, we have tools like Zipkin and Jaeger. Network tracing is awesome. Log collation and querying is incredible, and the ability to instrument code with monitors and gauges is amazing. But ultimately, it's a bit like walking into an operating room. The patient is on the table. A million little screens and monitors are all barking information at you. Somehow you have to make sense of it all. But if you're not a doctor, you really don't have a clue what it all means. And that's the problem. Disjointed information isn't really that helpful. In order to piece together disjointed logs, traces, exceptions, and monitors, you have to make mental leaps. And if you don't have a vast inference engine collected over years of experience and domain expertise, well, your intuition isn't worth very much. As a matter of fact, your mental leaps could very likely kill the patient. So, what Datadog has done is put logs, exceptions, monitors, and traces all in one place so you can instantly pivot between them without losing context. That means that, for instance, you could drill into all the exceptions that emanate from a failed network span, or instantly find all the exceptions linked to an SLO variance. The possibilities are endless. So, after a couple of workshops messing around with the new features in Datadog, I had a light bulb moment. Here it is. The new ops tooling is so good that even someone with little or no domain knowledge could support an app in production. As a matter of fact, the new ops tooling is so good that you could support an app in production without even knowing a programming language. You don't need to be a doctor anymore. With the new tools, any reasonably intelligent person can actually reason about production problems from observable facts. Production support no longer hinges on the intuition of one or two unicorn team members, and that is really remarkable. I think we're at a watershed moment. For the first time in my experience, the vicious cycle can be replaced by a virtuous circle. Let me explain. Fixing problems for customers in production is perhaps the most virtuous act an engineer can do. Everyone should want to do it, and everyone should be able to do it. In a virtuous circle, all team members support production, and therefore, everyone shares in the status and recognition. In a virtuous circle, knowledge isn't locked away in the gray matter of the most experienced team members. Fixing problems in production results in a net add to the team's body of observable and documented knowledge. So, a single virtuous act actually perpetuates other virtuous acts. Because the entire team has a stake in reliability, quality improves, accruing more status to the team. There are no linchpins, no personal heroics, no one person can hold the team hostage. There's no drama. Well, that sounds awesome, right? But the only way to enable a virtuous circle is to level the playing field. You cannot expect an early career dev to make the same mental leaps as a senior dev. After all, if you don't have domain knowledge and experience, a mental leap might land you in the abyss. And that is why the new ops tooling is so awesome. Outfits like Datadog have leveled the playing field of production support. It's no longer the province of the most seasoned devs or those with the deepest domain knowledge. You don't need to be a science rocketist to put out dumpster fires in prod. Everyone can do it. Everyone should do it. My teams will for sure. Because the virtuous circle isn't just the right thing to do for customers, it's the right thing to do for teams. The show notes for this episode are available at impostersclub.io. Check it out. Feel free to leave me a comment and mingle with other imposters just like you. impostersclub.io.